это Lake Geneva. Такой прикольный городок. Каждый магазинчик такой уникальный, не похожий на другие. Цветочки настоящие висят. Обычно в городах искусственные вешают вот на фонари. Церковь. Is it a church?
Let's go.
Lake Geneva. Да, конечно, замечательные тучи, солнце, уголок. Неплохое такое местечко, погулять, пошляться по магазинчикам. Цветы, все так красочно, так необычно, архитектурно. Вот оно, озеро Lake Geneva. Столько лодок. А здесь это, вот здесь бывают зимой ледяные скульптуры, что ли. And the swimming area is right there.
Huh?
Swimming area.
Where? Why didn't you tell me?
I told you, you need to listen.
Why'd you say you wanted to go?
What else was the option? Лодки. Как много солнца, просто жуть. Прям глаза светят. Well, probably those guards might see you that you're jumping. I'll never never thought of that. You can kind of slide through that gate underneath. Just lay down. No, but the guard is looking.
Then go over here.
Well, they'll see that you're coming from here.
Tell me you had to pee in there, pee down the...
There is a restroom in that tent. And guard is still looking there. $5 за бич. В смысле, чтобы искупаться вот в этой грязи. On the 4th of July, they have like a boat. They light the boat in different lights, and we have like 3 circles here. Ой, уточки. Это гостиница. Можно так покататься на лодке. Вот они. В принципе, на каждом озере это одно и то же. Вот так вот катаешься на лодочке. Где мы когда катались? На Норман Лейк в Шарлотт, в Саут-Каролайне. Lady of the Lake Boat Tours. Покупаем 2 билета на подкататься на этой лодке. Озеро Женева. Город. Вильямс-Бэй. 144 фита глубиной максимум. Это делено на 3. Такой большой вообще. Под этим мостиком выплыть. Сноуборды. Или это детские. Плываешь и в озеро. В озеро. Такой городок туристический. Все расслаблены, все гуляют, никто не работает. Ну, соответственно, неплохая. Pathfinder. Погуляем здесь. Купили билеты на лодке покататься. Не знаю, какая из них будет. 2 часа. Если час, то $24. А если 2 часа, то $30 человека. О, вот это прикольное деревом обделанное. Оно не надо так колбасит. Наверное, вот на той. Вон она там сзади проплывает. Где? О, не видно. так вообще неплохо здесь. Погулять, пошляться по озеру, просто так. Hello. Люди шарахаются, думают, я их снимаю. А я просто так иду. Так вот. О, вон она, лодка приехала. Оказывается, наверное, на нее, сейчас будем садиться. Люди садятся на корабль. Ну, какие красивые мальчики. Капитаны корабля и штурман.
The Prairie Style building was designed by Mr. James Dresser, and he was a student of the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, Mrs. George Sturgis was an early summer resident here, and she gave that cottage along with the surrounding property to the city of Lake Geneva, and that was in 1894, and she gave it with the stipulation that that area was to always be used as a park, and as you can see, it still is today. That building stood there till about 1950, though, and then it was torn down, and this new library structure was built in its place. Now, during the tour today, we're going to be pointing out many interesting and beautiful homes in the state. A big cream-colored home on the floor on the hill there was the first large summer home built here on the lake. That was built in 1870. It was built for Shelton Sturgis, and him and his brothers were business partners, and they all had summer houses in the area. That mansion was torn down a decade ago to build the one, though, that you see there. Behind it, you'll see that gray building. That's the annex, and that was originally built to house the overflow of guests and servants from the original estate. Today, that's a single-family residence. It's Acorn Manor now. This group of homes is known as the Geneva Manor, built on 37 acres of the Levi Z. Leiter estate. That was originally known as Linden Lodge, and it dated back to 1879. The main mansion, which stood here behind the subdivision's beach and park area, contained more than 30 rooms and a master bathroom. Levi Leiter co-founded Field and Leiter Company, which in later years became simply known as Marshall Field and Company, but a lot of his money actually came from real estate investments.
Детский лагерь на берегу. Прикольно.
The home was built in 1874 for Nathaniel Kellogg Fairbank, who was president of the N.K. Fairbank Company, which was Chicago's leading manufacturer of soap at the time. Now, shortly after the home was completed, though, in 1875, it burned to the ground. However, the firemen, family, and servants were able to save the furnishings, the handsome wood trim, ornately carved mantelpieces, and even some of the staircases. Now, Mr. Fairbanks wasn't going to be deterred by this, so the following Monday, he used the blueprints from the original house and started to rebuild. Now, an 1890-foot along the shoreline itself, nothing behind it, no house or anything, can run anywhere from $15,000 to $45,000. So someone put it in perspective for me. I just graduated. They said you could have had your degree or about 2 to 3 feet of lakefront property. I'm still waiting to see what the better investment is at this point.
30 квадратных сантиметров стоит 10-15 тысяч. Это ничего не считается, просто кусочек земли. Прикол. Размер моей сумки это 30 квадратных сантиметров стоит.
Until then, I pretty much had to be talking about
Моя, конечно, сумка не квадратная, я имею в виду, в общем, такого размера квадратик.
But up on the hill there, this kind of starts at the beginning of the Gold Coast, where a lot of the houses remain pretty much intact. That's Blacktop up there. Blacktop is that house, the red roof. It was built in 1881 for John T. Lester, who was a prominent member of the Chicago Board of Trade. Now, this house is kind of notable just because of the way you can see it's got the veranda with the big, and there's a lot of the big windows around it. And that's because a lot of these houses were built in the time before air conditioning, so they really had to utilize strategic windows and everything to angle them just right to catch as much of that cool lake breeze that we get in the heat of the summer. So
говорят, что дома здесь так
you can see that they utilize that pretty well. But the next 6 properties are particularly interesting because they currently are or were at one point owned by the Wrigley family.
окна и вообще
Under William and
постройки
P.K. Wrigley, the family
так
amassed
сформированы,
vast
что
business,
была
sports, and real
вид
estate
из
holdings. At the time of
озера.
P.K.'s passing in 1977, the family's interests included the Wrigley Chewing Gum Company, the Cubs, Wrigley Field, the Wrigley Building downtown Chicago, as well as significant real estate holdings. Original, but this house is only about a third of the size of the original small hunting lodge.
Красивый дом.
That next home there is called Green Gables and was P.K. Wrigley's main residence at the time of his passing. It's not the original Green Gables. The original home dated back to 1892 and was the home of the multimillionaire sportsman C.K.G. Billings, for whom Billings, Montana was named. William Wrigley Jr., the founder of the Chewing Gum Company, purchased Green Gables in 1911, and the original home was torn down in 1955 to build this new one. At the time, it was considered pretty state-of-the-art because everything from the drapery to the flagpole were controlled electronically. So back then, that was a pretty big deal. Next door, you can see that building with all the dark windows. That houses their indoor Olympic-sized swimming pool. I just past Green Gables. You might look at this property here and think, okay, this is a lot more modest. The Wrigleys have toned it down quite a bit. Actually, that's not a house at all, though. That's just a pool and game house for them. They got a pool out front there with a little diving board. It's really good to have because there's really not a whole lot of places to swim around the lake here. So it's the Wrigley fleet of yachts. Just past that massive house there. That was completed last year, actually earlier this spring, really. And that's rumored to just be the Wrigley guest house. Now that brown building there briefly interrupts the Wrigley property, but don't worry, it continues about a half-mile back with the Wrigley Arabian Horse Farm and private polo fields. That boat there is the A to E. It's a 70-foot long yacht, originally built in New York in 1911 and then motored to Racine and brought over here eventually, named for PK's mother. Now, it was originally the first gasoline-powered yacht of its kind on the lake here. Then there ended up being about 60 or so in the later years, but now today there's only 6 remaining, including 2 in our fleet. Now as we ran around this small point of land, we'll get a good view of Witchwood, the final home on the Wrigley complex. It was known as Wadsworth Hall. It was completed in 1906 for Noreen W. Harris of the Harris Trust and Savings Bank. Today that's BMO Harris. Now, in 1920, it was purchased by Walden W. Shaw, and he founded the Yellow Taxi Cab Company in Chicago. And then by the 1930s, it was owned by his son-in-law, Daniel F. Peterkin Jr., who was the president of the Morton Salt Company at the time. It remained in his family for about 80 years before it was bought by Richard Driehaus, an investment advisor, and he's the current owner there. He's done a lot to preserve the property. He's even gone as far as to replace all the mortar between the bricks of that home, from white mortar to red mortar to match the color of the bricks. But he's really best known around the lake for the big birthday parties he likes to throw himself and about 1,000 of his closest friends on the front lawn there. He likes to have a theme each year. One of the themes was Wizard of Oz. He had the words Oz spelled out in this big flower gardens out front. Yellow brick road wrapping around his house. The house itself was draped. Built in 1906 for Mr. A.C. Bartlett. He founded a hardware chain that's now True Value Hardware. Now, Richard Suter, who was the contractor for these houses, he was also building the Swift and Harris homes that we just talked about in that same year. So Mr. Bartlett was kind of third in the pecking order to get his property finished, and it was looking like the winter was going to...
О, боже мой, какой замок. О, красота.
Thomas F. Withrow. He sold that home after a few years to the Ryerson family. Now, the Ryersons had the good fortune of owning one of the few lumber and steel yards that survived the Great Chicago Fire. So as the city began to rebuild, obviously they were in pretty high demand and they made quite a bit of money. But the Ryersons were really best known for being the big party hosts of their days. They were sort of the Gatsbys of their era because they had over such guests as the Fords, the Firestones, the Rockefellers, Thomas...
But once he got here to the United States in the mid-1800s, he was virtually penniless. And so what he started doing is he started making and selling costume jewelry from a pushcart on the sidewalks of New York City. And during this time, he saved up all of his money, where at the time of the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, he moved to Chicago and he liquidated all of his assets and put his family in a pretty uncomfortable situation. But he walked around the burnt out city and he purchased real estate for just pennies on the dollar. And the reason the land was sold for so cheap is because so-called experts said that, one, Chicago would never rebuild after the devastation of the fire, and two, if it did rebuild, it definitely would not be in the same spot. They predicted it to be where Gary, Indiana is now, and that obviously never happened. And so after he purchased this land, he sat on it for a couple of years, and what do you guys know? Chicago actually started to rebuild. And what he was sitting on was about 80% of the downtown loop of Chicago. And what he did with his land is he gladly sold it back to the same exact people who he bought it from, but he sold it for about 150 to 200 times more. And this didn't make him a very popular man in Chicago, as you guys can imagine, but it definitely did not make him a popular man here up at the lake as well, because a lot of those people that he quote-unquote screwed over in the Chicago deal all lived up around the lake at that time and were able to watch him build the largest home here with all their money. So that didn't make him too popular, but like I said, he completed it in 1901, and there's 7 levels in all. There's 2 sub-basements, 4 main levels, and a rooftop terrace. The exterior walls are dressed Bedford limestone, the interior walls are Tennessee marble, and all the floors are hand-laid parquet tile.
В общем, что он сказал, что этот мужик после того, как сгорел Чикаго, он скупил землю в Чикаго, а потом взял ее и перепродал государству, потому что Чикаго стал заново выстраиваться. И вот, в общем, купил и перепродал, и вот сделал много денег. И построил здесь дом.
Next came the failed Christmas tree museum, and golly gee, I wonder why that failed in the summer resort like Lake Geneva, but it did, and I think the developer who has it now though has it right. He's developed it into 5 luxury condominiums. There's 1 on the first floor, 2 on the second, and 2 on the third. So that is the story of the largest home ever built here at the lake, originally called Younglands and today known as Stone Manor. But as we approach the city of Lake Geneva here, I have just a few things to talk about. This is Suites Hotel. To the left side of that, there is the Victorian Mansion style structure, and that is the Baker House, an elegant fine dining experience. To the left side of that, there is the maroon-colored roof building, and that is the Harbor Shores Hotel. Right in front of the Harbor Shores Hotel is Gino's East Pizza, famous for their deep dish pizza, a very good place if you guys want to get some late lunch. It's a good spot to eat. The orange, or the maroon, wow, I'm getting my colors screwed up. The aqua-colored roof building, right next to the maroon-colored roof building, is the Cove, and that is another hotel. And attached to the Cove is Sprecker's Restaurant, famous for Sprecher root beer. And then the tallest building here in the city of Lake Geneva, that is the Geneva Towers. And I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, it's ugly. The reason I say that is 1, because it is ugly, but 2, they actually had to tear down Frank Lloyd Wright's largest commission ever to build that. And that upset a lot of people here at the lake. And so what the city officials did is they had a meeting, and now they established a law stating that you cannot build taller than any of the tallest treetop here in the city of Lake Geneva. So that will be the tallest building here in the city and the ugliest. And right now where we're approaching is the Riviera Docks, home of the Lake Geneva cruise line. And right in front of the Riviera Docks is the Riviera Ballroom. And this used to feature the likes of Artie Shaw, Wayne King, the Dorsey brothers, the great Louis.
Живились, боже мой, какая красота. Опс, какая машина. Совершенно все по-другому, когда солнце вышло. Боже мой, совершенно другая красота, когда с солнцем. Представляю, вот это все туристы. Это, в общем-таки, городок живет за счет туристов, и когда лето. А зимой здесь просто, я не знаю, мертво все. Уголочек классный. закончили свое путешествие. Уже подплываем к берегу. Did you like it? Did you like it? Did you have enough rest? That's what I did when we were in St. Petersburg. I just took a boat tour just to get some rest. My mom said, like, we've been walking and walking and walking, and then it started raining, and we just got on a boat on, I think, Geneva.
I forgot all of it.
And we just, I was sleeping all the way while we were boating. But it was those close one.
It's amazing.
Я говорю, все эти довольно-таки скучные, если как бы один раз, а потом по всей Америке они все одинаковые. Допустим, есть такой же тур во Флориде, миллионер тропа какая-то, в общем, где эти рассказывают великие дома всяких миллионеров. Есть точно так же там в Шарлотте есть такое тоже озеро, Лейк, там тоже тебя на лодку такую сажают большую и рассказывают, кто живет на берегу. Собственно, какая мне разница, кто живет в этих домах. Тем более они говорят, рассказывают, что это самое там все эти знаменитости, которые знают американцы. А в принципе мне до этих знаменитостей нет дела. Поэтому мы первые идем, сходим. He said don't get up. Huh? Well, yeah, he said that, and you're the one to get up.
Why is everybody else?
Well, did you see anybody get up from upstairs? Хотела. It was great, thank you.
Oh, hope you enjoyed it.
Красивых. We talk good, informative. The sad story that I don't know anybody what who he talked about. Did you?
Couple, yeah.
I mean, Wrigley, yes. Record Drive, yes. Taxi cab, yellow one, yes. Короче, три знаменитости. I don't know, don't care. В общем, три знаменитости, которые я знала, это кто сделал желтое такси, потом Ригли, жвачку, который, да. It's across, it's the one next to our house, no?
Which one?
The one we order.
No, it's not the same.
Ой. Ой. Oh, almost. Живились, о боже мой, какая красота. Опс, какая машина. Совершенно все по-другому, когда солнце вышло. Боже мой, совершенно другая красота, когда с солнцем. Представляю, вот это все туристы. Это, в общем-таки, городок живет за счет туристов, и когда лето. А зимой здесь просто, я не знаю, мертво все. Колочек классный. Интересно, ходишь? О.
Was this it?
No, it was like a patio place.
A patio?
Yeah.
An outdoor patio?
Yeah.
Well, let's do that.
Haven't we been here?
Huh?
Haven't we been here?
Are you sure the other one has a patio? Hmm?
Yes. Gino's. Probably it was Gino's Pizza. Идем кушать в Джинус пицца. Хочу сказать, что места меняются, места остаются, а люди меняются в твоей жизни. О, как прикольно. Это hotel lobby. Это наше вью, пока мы ждем пиццу. 45 минут, боже мой. Можно... Кстати, пицца, да. Это бассейн от гостиницы. Вон там озеро. Классное вью. Блин, почему говорю вью? Классный вид. О. Прикольно. Люди сюда на все выходные приезжают. Все курортные городки выглядят одинаково. Я была, что забыла совсем про пиццу. Вот это наша Джинус пицца. Я уже почти все съела. Добавляется табаско в мою пиццу, сыр и орегон. Это мои дополнительные компоненты. Приятного аппетита. Вот поэтому люди здесь такие толстые, как в моем предыдущем видео. Надеюсь, мне еще до таких далеко. Ха-ха.